Right now, the biggest international news is coming in from Syria. In the Middle East, a lot has been happening over the past 2 to 3 years, but in the past few hours, Assad regime has fallen in Syria. Now, the rebel forces, and this came as a surprise to Bashar al-Assad, captured Damascus in a rapid offensive on Sunday. It brought also an end to about 5 decades of iron rule, as many call it, of Assad's family and the government. But moments after Assad's ouster, rebels then took control of the military base, Syria's broadcast station, as well as stormed into the presidential palace. We are told, according to our sources, that the ousted President Assad and his family have fled from Syria and have found asylum in Russia. Russian government, meanwhile, claims they are in touch with the Syrian opposition as well, and they've issued a statement on state television. The Syrian rebel group, meanwhile, also issued this statement. Here's what he has to say. I quote it here: "The future is ours, and there is no room of turning back."
هذا النصر يا اخواني تاريخ جديد للامه الاسلاميه باكملها. هذا النصر يا اخواني تاريخ جديد للمنطقه. كم تلافينا من مخاطر. ترك سوريا تركها مزرعه للاطماع الايرانيه. نشر فيها الطائفيه. اثار فيها الفساد.
Ashraf Wani is joining me now. He continues to track the latest on that. Ashraf, that happened quick and fast. Having known Bashar al-Assad's regime, it seemed unbelievable at once. What exactly happened in Syria in the past one day? And then how is the future looking like? What's happening? Tell us about this rebel group that has taken over.
Pooja, actually, it was not expected that so rapidly and so quickly the rebels and the opposition forces will take over the Syria, which is under the which was under the civil war for last so many years. But during 2019, Russia and Iran openly supported the Assad regime and saved him from these rebel groups. They were hiding in the parts of the Syria as well as in the neighboring countries, including in the Turkey and then in other parts of the neighboring countries. But when these rebels thought that probably the Assad regime is getting weaker due to the ongoing war in the Middle East between the Israel and the Lebanon, then Israel and Iran, Israel and Syria itself, because during last 1 year, Israel has damaged the military infrastructure of not only Hezbollah in Syria, but also of Iran as well as of Syria itself. They took this opportunity and came from different sides during last 10 days, and after town and city, they were capturing all these areas of the Syria. But when on the Friday, the rebels reached the Hamas, which is the known for the uprising during also in 2016 as well as in early 1982, when rebel and protests took place against the Bashar al-Assad's father, Hafiz Assad. Then he carried out the biggest massacre of the history in Hamas, where 40,000 Syrians were got killed in those attacks by the Assad regime, Assad's father's regime. And when the rebels reached that town, it was expected that probably they are close to the Damascus and they are going to take it. And meanwhile, at that time, on Friday, a mega meeting of the foreign ministers, including Indian foreign minister was part of it, was taking place in the Doha, Qatar, where the main stakeholders, Russia, Turkey, as well as the Gulf countries, the foreign ministers of Gulf countries were participating. But by surprise, these rebels on Sunday early morning announced that they have taken over the Damascus, and also the news then came that Bashar al-Assad has fled the country. It was not clear yesterday that where he has gone. Some were speculating probably his plane is missing, somewhere saying that has crashed. But finally, late evening and today early in the morning, the Russia has now confirmed that the Bashar al-Assad has taken the refuge in the country, in the Russia. And it was also expected because Russia is the only ally and the trusted ally of Bashar al-Assad. They had the decade-old relations with each other, and Russia has also interests in the Syria. Russia also helped Bashar al-Assad to save his regime in 2016, so he has taken refuge in that. But the interesting part is that the coming days, how this new rebel government, which is from different sides, different groups, different sects, how they will unite and form the government, which has been okayed.
That's
not only
interesting
by the
because, yes, if many are saying that, as they're saying, a certain dictator has been brought down, but what happens here on in the next few days could be very crucial. Could it be better or worse for Syria? Ashraf, I'll be coming back to you in just a short while, because this clearly is the big story. Assad's ouster has shifted Syria's global dynamics. World leaders are closely monitoring, and they have responded as well to what happened. India also has issued a statement because Indian embassy in Damascus has said that it stays operational. All Indian nationals in Syria are currently safe. But the global leaders, specifically from the West, have a lot to say, interestingly. French President Emmanuel Macron, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer praised Assad's downfall, calling it a victory for Syrian people. Joe Biden, incumbent president, will hold a security review meeting to take stock of the situation. Interestingly, Donald Trump, president-elect of the USA, has said and asked USA to stay out of this mess.
Day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its oppression.
Some of the rebel groups that took down Assad have their own grim record of terrorism and human rights abuses. We've taken note of statements by the leaders of these rebel groups in recent days, and they're saying the right things now. But as they take on greater responsibility, we will assess not just their words, but their actions. And we are mindful that there are Americans in Syria.
Welcome the fact that Assad has gone. The Syrian people had to put up with his brutal regime for far, far too long. We're talking to regional allies. It's very important now that there's a political settlement, a political way forward. And it's very, very important that we emphasize that civilians and minorities must be protected in this process. But very, very pleased that Assad has fallen.
Über die letzten Jahre hat das syrische Volk unter Assad entsetzliches Leid erfahren. Deshalb ist das Ende der Assad-Herrschaft erstmal eine gute Nachricht. Heute stehen wir an der Seite aller Syrerinnen und Syrer, die voller Hoffnung sind auf ein freies, gerechtes und sicheres Syrien.
Let me urge all Syrians to prioritize dialogue, unity, and respect for international humanitarian law and human rights as they seek to rebuild their society.
All right, so I want to go across now to India Today's managing editor, Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav, while, of course, what has happened in Syria, only the days will tell, but I find very interesting comments coming in from the Western nations. Tell us more about it, because while most of them are hailing, I find Donald Trump's comment quite interesting when he says America needs to stay out of this mess.
Look, this is one more mess that will actually be created in this part of the world. Do keep in mind, regimes were overthrown in Libya. It led to chaos. Regimes were overthrown in Iraq. It led to chaos. Americans withdrew after 20 years in Afghanistan. It led to chaos. So, this is one more regime change operation that has happened. But what will follow is going to be very, very interesting in the days and months ahead. What Israel has already done is Israel has already gone and occupied the buffer zone along the Golan Heights. So after 50 years, Israeli forces are in southern Syria once again. That's extremely critical. And this just goes on to show that this entire operation is to weaken ultimately Iran. It's a mission to take down the Khamenei regime or the Ayatollah's regime in Iran. And the Hamas was targeted, Hezbollah was targeted. Now Assad has been overthrown. According to reports, he's been given amnesty and refuge and asylum in Russia. So he and his family are already in Russia. And there's a regime change operation that is systematically taking place here. But will the people who are taking over power, while right now they say that for the next 18 months, they will ensure peace and stability is ensured and there'll be rule of law. But will it be rule of the Sharia? And if so, what kind of Sharia will be implemented in Syria in times ahead? These are questions that are being asked. Will there be massacres of the opposite side? Now, all of these are questions that the West, while it hails a regime change operation, because ultimately it suits their goals, but will it lead to peace or more chaos in Syria? Again, one of the oldest civilizations of the world is on cusp of destruction and ruin right now.
All the latest, because remember that while a big development has taken place, what happens here and how will Julani take ahead Syria? Will it be for better or for worse? Thank you, Gaurav, for the latest on this. Meanwhile, Syrian rebels have declared President Bashar al-Assad's ouster following a lightning offensive, and that came suddenly as a jolt as well. It came, in fact, also more than a decade of civil war after. Here's what happened, in case you missed, in Syria in the past 24 hours.
Gunshots rang out in celebration across Syria's capital on Sunday as rebel forces declared they had seized control of Damascus and thrown out President Bashar al-Assad. That spells an end to the Assad family's iron-fisted rule and comes after more than 13 years of civil war in a seismic moment for the Middle East. After mounting a sudden advance a week ago, the rebels on Sunday announced on state TV that they had toppled the president, calling him a tyrant. The Syrian rebel coalition said in a statement it was working to complete the transfer of power to a transitional governing body with full executive powers. It added that, quote, "The Great Syrian Revolution has moved from the stage of struggle to overthrow the Assad regime to the struggle to build a Syria together that befits the sacrifices of its people." Assad, who had crushed all forms of dissent, flew out of Damascus for an unknown destination early on Sunday, according to army sources. Russia's foreign ministry later said in a statement Assad had left the country after giving orders for a peaceful handover of power. As people celebrated the government's collapse in cities such as Aleppo, Syrian Prime Minister Mohammed Ghazi al-Jalali said he had been in contact with rebel commander Abu Mohammed al-Golani to discuss managing the transitional period. That marks a notable development in efforts to shape Syria's political future. The Prime Minister also called for free elections so Syrians can choose the leaders they want. But that would require a smooth transition in a country with complex competing interests, from Islamists to groups linked to the United States, Russia and Turkey. Assad's ouster is a major blow to the influence of Russia and Iran in the region. They were key allies who propped him up in the long-running conflict's critical moments. The pace of events has stunned Arab capitals and raised fears of a new wave of regional instability. It marks a turning point for Syria, shattered by years of war that has killed hundreds of thousands of people. It has also forced millions abroad as refugees, many of them seen cheering on Sunday on the streets of their adopted homes from Lebanon to Germany. Western governments have long shunned the Assad-led state, but now they have to decide how to deal with a new administration that looks set to be influenced by a group globally labeled as terrorists. Led by the commander Golani, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, is Syria's strongest rebel group. It used to be an al-Qaeda affiliate, and some Syrians are worried that it will impose draconian Islamist rule.